And so there's this contest to win a trip to Texas to playtest Ultima. I filed a thing, I answered all the questions, and then I got a phone call from EA telling me that I did not really win the trip because there was no trip to win, but they were actually looking for someone. Basically, they wanted a gamer, and that's how I got the job. And that's how I started. We are looking for a company to make Thief 4, and you are the perfect company for that. And I was like, absolutely we are, because I'm a huge fan of Thief. Square Enix bought the franchise. Okay, so we killed again, I guess. And he said, nah, just make your own version of Thief 4 and call it Dishonored. Having a consistent philosophy about game design brings you ideas that you don't have on your own. If you like any of my games, there are chances you'll like the next one, even if it's not a sequel or something. What we don't want are situations that feel unfair, like where you are with the villain and you're stuck in a cinematic. That's to me is absolutely unacceptable. Never you will see a game of mine where that. Man, like we are manipulating you into the experience. That's not my thing.
Hello and welcome to Culturescape, the show that interviews the geek creators and influencers who built nerd culture. I'm your host, Pete Pischke, and today's episode is sure to be a doozy. I have with me the incredible Raphaël Colantonio, the founder of Arkane Studios, the creator of legendary titles such as Dishonored, Prey 2017, The Dark Messiah of Might and Magic, Ark's Fatalis, and most recently Weird West, which he made with his current studio, WolfEye. He is an auteur of immersive sim game design and someone respected across the industry. Today we're going to talk about his career, the games he's worked on, the ins and outs of game development, and maybe a little bit on what he's working on next. Plus, he has an electro rock band called Weird Wolves.
That's right.
This should be a good one. So if you haven't yet, go ahead, click like and subscribe to the video down below. And now, without further ado, welcome to the show, Raphaël.
Thank you for inviting me. Well, I'm just here to answer your questions, so let's do it.
Awesome. No, it's a complete honor. I think, going through your games, getting ready for the interview, I think in particular the game Prey.
But
I think it's one of the best games I've played as like a video game. The design is just so cohesive. It's cohesive in a way that very few other games are, and so it's really cool to get to talk to you. Prey is my brother's very favorite game. He doesn't play always a lot of video games, but Prey is one that he really adores. So I told him I was talking to you, and I was like, yeah, cool. A little bit at least.
That's thank you so much. It was a team effort, and we at that time the company was we started to have a very, very good team. I mean, we more than started because it was post Dishonored, and so the people really knew what they were doing, and so that was a fun, nice project, even though it was hard to make and there was tons of drama associated with it. But it ended up being probably my biggest cult game for sure.
Yeah. There's so many avenues we could go down, and we will get back to Prey. But first, let's tell a little bit about yourselves. How would you describe yourself to people in a few words?
Introverted, young nerd who was into Dungeons and Dragons when I was maybe 8 years old, and I was into Apple IIe, playing Ultima 1. With a friend of mine that had an Apple IIe at home. So I did not, but he had one. His dad bought one, so I was lucky to be able to sneak in during when his dad was away, and I would play. I was a sad kid because I had a very tough childhood. Like I lost my mom when I was 13 years old. She died, and I did not have a father, so it was a pretty rough start. And I think my video games and music and Dungeons and Dragons, or doing comic drawings like comics books, etc., was my escape. I was lucky that that was my addiction. It was not, I think in another reality, same kid as me would have maybe fallen into drugs or something, because that's what can happen when you're a kid, and this kind of things happen, and based on who's around you, etc. So I was surrounded pretty well, and with the right type of friends, where like my escape was think imagining worlds, and so I was always writing stories. I was always into my Dungeons and Dragons, my Call of Cthulhu, etc.
No, I had no idea. That is it's a pretty rough way to have life start. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Well, it's a spin. It gives you it's a flair for you for start of your life, and but I think at the same time it probably made me a little more sensitive and a little more artistic and interesting into worlds and art, as if none of that had happened. It's not that it's desirable, but it's it's like a tree. That's how I grew.
Yeah, no, it was difficult, but it was also those trials that helped create the person that you are and gave you the interests, and you have a wide array of very well-defined interests that definitely have led into other things in your career. So that makes sense. Interesting thing about your start into video games is pretty interesting. I think that you were like 18 and you were in the French army. Can you tell us a little bit about how you went from being in the French army over to working at early EA?
Right. So the reason why I was in the French army was because it was mandatory. It's the military service in France, which now is not mandatory anymore, but back then it was. And I was, I believe, 20 actually. And a friend of mine brought a magazine to me. It was called Joystick. It's a magazine that doesn't exist anymore now. But and there was a contest for winning a trip to Texas, Austin, Texas, actually, to playtest the new Ultima. And I was a huge fan of Ultima. To me, when I was, Ultima was my first RPG at 8 or 9 when I played it. And to me, there was nothing more important to my eyes than Ultima or Ultima Underworld, which was the two games that I was into so much. And so there's this contest to win a trip to Texas to playtest Ultima 8. And I filed a thing, I answered all the questions. It was like a few nerdy questions about Ultima. And then I got a phone call from EA telling me that I did not really win the trip because there was no trip to win, but they were actually looking for someone to join them. Like they were looking for a gamer, basically, who could handle anything that is not sales or marketing or administration. So it included IT, setting up the machines, demoing the games to the distributors, customer support, etc. Testing games, and basically they wanted a gamer. And so I said, well, I'm doing the military service. And they said, well, how about that? We interview and then we'll see what can be done, right? And so I had an interview, and all of them really liked me, to the point where they said, look, we're going to make the paperwork and we're going to get you out of the army, which was crazy. It's a very, very rare thing. And they did it. And so they got me out of the army, and I left a few months before the end of the military service. I had a very nice colonel that was supportive to that job that I could get. And that's how I got the job. And that's how I started. I studied at EA. I was employee number 7, I believe, in Lyon, because they were setting up an office there. That's also why they profiled me, because I was in Lyon. And that was it. And shortly after that, I met with Richard Garriott, who was coming from... So Richard Garriott is the maker of Ultima.
Yeah, he's also he plays the God King narrator character in those games also.
Yeah, he's Lord British, right? And so to me, for most people, their god is going to be an actor or something. For me, it was him, right? And so shortly after that, he came to London there was a show called ECTS, and my boss said, okay, I'm sending you to London. You're gonna be able to meet Richard Garriott. And that was amazing. It was incredible to be part of that world where I had no idea that I wanted to. It was a dream. Working in video games somehow was incredible. So yeah, that's how it started.
That's that's amazing. I don't think anyone has hardly ever gotten so much out of a sweepstakes in a magazine before.
Yeah.
Yeah, who knows? Well, I don't know what the other reality Raphael would be doing.
I think I would have made, back then I either wanted to work in video games. That was my true dream. My other to dream was to um, be in a band. So I probably would have pushed that as much as possible. And also I was in general, I think I had that kind of independent mindset where if none of that had worked, I would probably have opened a restaurant or done something for to be on my own somehow, on my own terms. It's really something that is important to me.
Yeah, no, you're one of those kind of people that always needs to be working on new projects, trying their own thing. It's hard to just sit you down in just like an office and just stay there like a lot of us are very comfortable with doing.
Yeah, I think different people, different things, and I think for me it was also a way to control the chaos, because of the difficult childhood. I think I either close myself in the world or write music or thought like later on I'm just gonna do something like my own business with my friends, etc. But like nobody's gonna basically tell me what to do. I think that was the drive.
Gotcha. Okay, so how did you end up from going from EA to eventually doing your own game studio and trying to make your own games?
So I always wanted to make games. That was the and starting at EA, as often, we give you this, and it feels like this, and then as time passes by, you start to be frustrated, and you say, yeah, I wish I had this again. So I think that's kind of human nature, and maybe not all of us thinks the same way, but like at some point I was not. I was just like, okay, I'm just a customer service guy or like doing IT or whatever. That's not exactly what I want. I wanted to make games. That was really the thing. So I pushed from within EA to be moved to England to be an assistant producer. I wanted to be with the devs, because to me they were doing magic, and I wanted to understand what they were doing and how I could. And I had my own idea of a game in my mind. It was something that was frankly the simpler version of Ox Fatalis. Like Ox Fatalis was actually being already thought through all those years when I was like, I want to make my game. So I was like writing stories on a little piece of papers. I was doing like little dungeons, etc. And eventually, I was so pushy that they eventually sent me to England for 2 years. I stayed there for 2 years, and I worked on a few games as an assistant producer. It was not as glamorous and fun as I thought it would be. There was a lot of admin job. There was a lot of assisting on things that were not that funny or fun. But there was occasionally a little bit of design, and that's really what I like to do the best. So that's from there. At some point, I said, why wouldn't I try to work for Richard Garrett in Texas? So while I was there, I went to visit a friend in Austin, as I was in 95 or something like this, 96 maybe, and met Richard Garrett again, and we remembered me, etc. And I eventually I was so I wanted a job in Austin, and he said, okay, let's have you work for the next Ultima Online, actually. And you can't imagine my level of excitement. So I signed the contract, and I was waiting for him to send it back, to send it to England, where I was living back then. And 2 weeks go by, and nothing happens. And it's 3 weeks, and I'm like, I'm emailing him. I was gonna say I'm texting him. There's no text back then. I was emailing him like, hey, what's happening? And he was not replying. And eventually, he sent that huge email explaining to me that EA was shutting down Origin. So I had, and you know how it is, like you're in England, The weather is what it is, and in my head, I was already in Texas. I was gonna work on my favorite game of all time in sunny Austin. That was gonna be incredible, and that thing just dissolves like a
Yeah.
And I was so affected and depressed by that thing. So I left EA, went to France, and eventually, worked for another company for a while, trying to gather my thoughts, and studied Arkane. Studied Arkane with very little amount of experience. Frankly, I just had a few other friends that I had met at different studios that were equally inexperienced as I was, and equally naive and crazy and adventurous. And we studied Arkane. We studied Arkane Studios, and that at that time, I knew that when Arkane would be big enough, I would move myself to Austin, Texas.
You did, and which that is where you are currently. So that did come to pass.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first big game, I think, when your work came was later on. I think that's after Bethesda picked you up and you guys published Arx Fatalis, which I don't even know if you are aware of. I guess there's still a small but still going mod community around that game. Like, I don't even know how many years later it's been.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes I go on Reddit and I see people talking about Arx Fatalis. Sometimes I chime in because it's, of course, Arx is my first game, and it's definitely my most uncompromised game, because there was nobody to direct us, nobody to tell us anything. So it was just this, it's got a special place in my heart, of course. So, but I do see some of the mods and stuff, or at least like there's some updates, and so it's really nice.
It is. It's pretty cool. That's kind of where I think you can see the thread line in what really sets your game design unique. It's just the way that your games really focus heavily like a good immersive sim, like you could have got from Origin, where you used to work, or Looking Glass, the creators of Thief, which I'm sure is another influence on you. It's just like the systems of the game itself are just so immersive, and there's just so many things you can do with it. And even compared to even some of its contemporaries at the time, like some of their mid Elder Scrolls games. I mean, those games do offer a lot. They do have a lot of immersive sim elements, but even Arx Fatalis is just even way beyond that. Arx Fatalis is almost a game that's like too immersive to a point, if I'm being completely honest.
I think they went for scale, because of course we were looking at Morrowind back then. I think they shipped maybe a month before us, which never helped for sales. But they, I think I'm pretty sure the people behind Morrowind were inspired by the same game as I was, Ultima and Ultima Underworld, and it's just that it's a different expression of that inspiration. For them it was more about the epic quests and the large things to visit, the large amount of objects, etc. For me, it was more 2 rooms with maybe this weird creature lurking in the corner, and a physics that I can throw and bounce and like maybe attract that creature, and maybe try to negotiate with it. It's like the scale was different. It's more of an intimate, more of a super crafted, yet simulated experience too. So that's why I think those games are different, and that's why I think their games are immersive sim adjacent, because they do have a lot of simulation-y kind of things. But maybe for us it's more about like that trying to feel like the character in the space. We were always obsessed with the physicality of the character, like how does it feel to bang your sword against the wall, etc. And of course, Arx was extremely rudimentary, but it was already the intention. That was the intention. Like you have a torch, you throw your torch, the fire spreads around. If there's a noise, someone hears it. If there's a cheese, a rat comes close, etc., etc.
Yeah, no, the magic system in that game is incredible. It's pretty impressive. So of course that leads us now to the first game. I think this is what most people first are thinking of, which of course Dishonored which is a fantastic game. I replayed it for this interview, and it holds up really well. It and Prey hold completely up. Uh, that's such a great game. That game when you guys made it was almost like capturing lightning in a bottle. Because I remember when I was playing that game, I was like, oh, okay, because we're in 20. The game's published in like what, 2012. And I was like, okay, so now we're advancing towards the next generation of consoles. Oh, this is kind of where games can go from here. Because I kind of felt like that generation previous, the 360 generation, there's a lot of good stuff happening. But I also felt like sometimes it was kind of clunky. I was like, oh, here's Dishonored. Here's a new way that games could really go. How did that come together? So you do Arx Fatalis. What's the story of Dishonored? Maybe tell us a little bit about that. You working with Harvey Smith.
Yeah, I think it's always hard to condense 20 years of history in 1 hour. Right?
My questions are a little bit too broad sometimes. That's also
no, but I mean it's an interesting one. I think so. Arx Fatalis was our very first thing, and then we did Dark Messiah, Might and Magic, and you can tell already between Arx and Might and Magic, we're going towards a little more action, a little less of the RPG-ness. So like we're really focusing at that point on the physicality of the character, and also all the emergent gameplay, all the things that are the physics or the other systems that can interact with each other, because that's really an obsession for my type of designer. And at the end, and both Arx and Dark Messiah were, I think they were cool games, but they were also broken in many ways, and they were, they were trying to chew more than they could. And the team at the time of Arx was beginning, so like all the elements were not the best elements, and it's the same with Dark Messiah, Might and Magic, which we were still rotating. It's so hard to create a stellar team. It's really hard. And at the time of at the end of Dark Messiah, we met Victor Antonov, who came from Valve, and he was the art director of Half-Life 2. He unfortunately, and it's very, very sadly, passed away a few weeks ago. And it was an incredible character and an artist, and a very dear friend, and of course that affected me and all my friends as well. But anyway, we met this genius of an artist who elevates our team by working with us, not inside us. He was not like an employee of Arkane, but he was a contractor. But he was like always working very closely for years. We worked on we did that game that we wanted to produce called The Crossing, which is a game that never saw the day. We tried everything, and anyway, that's a different story. But the point is, by working with Victor on this prototype of a game called The Crossing, we elevated the team to a new level of execution. And so we still had that same mindset of wanting to do those simulation, those games that feels very physical and brutal, but also we finally had mastered one of the complex pieces, which was art. And Victor had trained and worked very closely with the people at Arkane so well that then we had an incredible team, from the art director to all the components that can make a level, right? So that was part of the puzzle. And then the other person that I really wanted to work with at some point, because that's been a theme of mine my entire career. I'm the biggest fanboy you will meet. So if there is someone that I like their work, I will try to have them work with me. And that started with Arx Fatalis, when I had the voiceover of some of the character of Arx came from Thief, like Stephen Russell, who was the lead character of Thief. And so I'm not going to list them all, but like it's been really a fan journey for me. So at some point there's Harvey, who is one of the people like that for me, right? It's like he worked on Deus Ex, and he was a lead designer on Deus Ex, and I was a big fan of Deus Ex, and he respected me too. And when I moved to Austin, we became friends. We would go out to lunch a lot. But there was never really an idea that he would join Arkane, because back then he was with, some other company and bigger corporations, etc. So we were like this close, little boutique that could not pay people very well. So there was no really any reason for him to join us. But when we, a little before we started Dishonored, he actually joined us. The things went wrong with this big corporation, as it often goes. And he said, "Hey, is it crazy to imagine me in your company?" And I was like, "Oh, man, I don't know. Why not? Like, maybe we'll fight, like we're both creative directors. We're both pretty strong-minded." And I said, "Yeah, I understand, etc." And then, we made it work. We said, "Okay, let's do it." So, and there's not that many creative directors that could integrate Arkane, because they would need to have that exact culture. And because the culture of my company was molded after very similar influences as his influences. He came out from Iron Storm, but before that he had worked for Origin, close to Richard Garriott, on Ultima 8, etc. So and by the way, he too had a shitty childhood with, he lost his mom, etc. So we had like some weird parallels between us in our sensitivities, in our what we like, in what we don't like, etc. I mean, of course, we're not the same person, but we could feel very each other as very relatable, and still are. I often maybe we meet once every 2 weeks. And so he joined, and then combined between all the know-how of Arkane and him and Victor and our super cool art director in Lyon back then. So like we had both Austin and Lyon working together and now the horsepower of Bethesda, and that money was not an issue anymore. So we could recruit a bigger, more established, say, programmers, for example, which were hard to find for low salaries. So this time, we had basically the investment, the right people, the right experience, and the right game in mind. We were like, okay, we know exactly what we're doing, and that's how Dishonored was made. Now, a little wrinkle in the Dishonored story is that initially, when Bethesda contracted us, they thought they were going to buy Thief, the franchise of Thief, and so they wanted us to do Thief 4. The guy at Bethesda that contacted me because I made an announcement at some point that the game I was working on at EA was killed. It's like, I mean, the journey of a developer is is full of rough moments, and one of them is when a game gets killed. So anyway, at some point we were desperate. We were like, okay, we're going to have to close this company. We have about 50 people, and the contracts get shut down. It was in 2008 or 2009 at one of the crashes, mini crashes of the industry. And then he contacts me out of nowhere. This guy was a big fan of all our games. He's called Todd Vaughn. He's the other Todd of Bethesda. And I had met him occasionally, but he's a very poker face, so I didn't really know what he thought. And this time he said, like, we are looking for a company to make Thief 4, and you are the perfect company for that. And I was like, absolutely we are, because I'm a huge fan of Thief, Looking Glass, and people did it all around the world.
Yeah.
And we could not believe it. So that's how the game started. Dishonored was actually Thief 4 until one day he called me and he said, yep, well, we actually not Eidos, Square Enix bought the franchise, so that's over. We're not doing Thief 4. And I thought, okay, so we killed again, I guess. And he said, nah, just make your own version of Thief 4 and call it Dishonored. And that was it.
So he was the one that he was the one that chose the name change.
Yes, because yes, I mean, like, even like, to go deeper into the details, Dishonored was a concept that he wanted a game with ninjas. And so he had this name in mind, and he wanted us to do a ninja game after that version of Thief did not work out. We still had all these prototypes and all this gameplay that felt very much like Thief, but a little accelerated, a little more punchy, right? And he said, well, he had this idea of like a ninja game, and he was like, it would be cool, like ninja game, Dishonored, and we thought about it and said, like, we don't know much about ninjas, and the game right now is more like in the Thief vibe, like somewhere in England, etc. So how about instead we go more like 1666 during the Great Fire, the Plague, and everything, and we add some witchcraft and some stuff that is more like in line with what we're familiar with as creatives and what we are interested in. Because it's, I love Japan. I visited it for the first time such a long time ago. It was fantastic, but it's such a complex culture that it would be extremely difficult to make a game about Japan if you, if you don't have Japanese people or something. So that's how it ended up being called Dishonored, because it has this kind of like almost like samurai thing theme to it, but it has it's just an interesting name. Eventually we reskinned that Japanese aspect into the fact that you were dishonored because you were accused wrongly of assassination of the Empress. That's how we turned it around, and everybody was fine with it. Most of all when they started to see the drawings and all the amazing things from the art team.
Yeah, that's a fantastic looking game. I mean, I just love the Dishonored series. I love how I wish there were more games like this that are highly stylized, that try to be closer to that AAA, AA kind of level. You don't really get that. It seems like most games now that are towards AAA rely more heavily on realism. I think there's something a lot going there with that kind of watercolor aesthetic, with this very exaggerated faces. It's almost like exaggerated, like British caricatures, and it's a fantastic looking game.
Yeah, for sure. I think realism is a bit of realism is brute forcing, right? You're doing, okay, we're going to put all the budget, and it's going to be good at the end. It's going to look good, this is for sure. But it's very brute force. I don't think this, and it will work. People will like it. I think when I was at Arkane, I was, of course, very ambitious on the gameplay side. I was obsessed by a specific type of gameplay, but little by little, my art director was also in his own right also obsessed with art and wanting to do. He was like, Raph, you like game design, I like art, let me do some really cool shit. And I was like, yeah, why not? And pretty quickly we were all convinced that they had it, between him and Victor. So when I say him, his name is Sébastien Mitton. Both combined, they had this. They came up with this really, really cool art style and visual design, and of course, there's tons of people around them that also added to the mix. But yeah, it ended up being very special, like an animated painting almost. It was it was beautiful. I think it's a very, very nice piece of art.
No, and I said earlier, it holds up. I mean, both it and Prey really do, for different reasons. But you look at other games of 2012, and there are still games from 2012 that look fine now. But I think even into the future, Dishonored will continue to have that special place, because that art style takes it pretty far. I think that's undervalued sometimes in the games industry, unfortunately. How did you? Because I do love Thief, but one of the interesting things that you do with your games that sets it apart from Thief is you have like map exfiltration. You have just so many levels, so many paths that players can take. You even have a path where people just like quit the map entirely. They're just like, I'm done with all this. I'm gonna skip it all. Just gonna go right on over it. And there's hardly any games I can think of that have that kind of mindset in the design. So how did you guys go about doing that. I read a lot in your process of doing games. Harvey Smith mentioned this in an interview just recently where he said that a lot of the time we'd be bug testing on Prey, and then something wrong would happen, and Raph would say, "Oh, we should do this, do that again."
Yeah, I think it comes from, first of all, we and it's still true with the new company WolfEye. It's people that have been working together for decades, and so we are really we know what we're doing. We know why we're doing this, and we all love this, right? But then there's a lot of tension as well. So a lot of those things rise from the tension, because if you look at the level design, back then the lead level designer was Christophe Carrier, and he's a very hard-headed guy. Now we still work together now. So we've been working together for 30 years. This is the truth.
Wow.
30 years. Yeah, right. So which is crazy. And we scream at each other lovingly, but you know, the thing is, he's the level design guy, and I'm the system guys, even though they are now, you know, there are people under us, of course. But the point is, I always like systems that break the game, and he hates the systems that break the game until he eventually likes them as well. But the reason why he hates them is because they're gonna break his levels. You know, like he's trying to do something with like knowing that you can jump this far, knowing that you can do this thing, etc. And there we go, and we say, hey, how about like we add this crazy gadget in there? Because it's not like we planned for everything in advance. And sometimes even the gadgets that were planned, because they rely on simulation, like they have real physics, then you end up having something that propels you in the air for, you know, logic. It makes sense, but you did not think of it when you did it, or it has some other property also with logic, like I don't know, it spawns water, and therefore, you know, everybody sleeps, or whatever it is. And so that's create those funny situations in levels, which often the team is super excited about, and then you get a choice between fixing it or supporting it, and often we know we like to support it, and then even if it means sometimes having to rewrite a little bit of the story, or to explain why it works this way, etc. So it's very organic. It's a very we don't plan absolutely for everything, but we know that at some point those little happy accidents, we actually encourage the happy accidents. And I'll tell you, it's exactly the same the way I write music. Like, I love happy accidents. And there are ways you can actually encourage those happy accidents and wait for them and recognize them when they happen. And then you decide what you want to do with them. And so I think there's a lot of that. Of course, said this way, it sounds like Toph is the bad guy, which is not the case, right? It's just that this tension between the two. And now you add the third one, which is the art, who, like, they want things that are vertical, they want things that look cool. So all of us combined, that's how you find, like, you end up with those crazy levels of Dishonored. And maybe the craziest of all was Jindosh mission, but that was for Dishonored 2. But even in Dishonored 1, we started to have some pretty elaborate missions where you could tell that the team was really mature at this point. You know, they really knew what they were doing. So yeah.
No, it's pretty cool. I just like that, because sometimes I feel like in other games where the player is sometimes, obviously in most games developers want their players to enjoy the game. Okay, that goes to be said. But sometimes it feels like what the player wants to do is a force against what the developer wants. Like, no, I don't want you to play this way. You should play this way. You know, you should follow this path and do the things I want you to do. And I love in video games where it's like, but maybe I don't want to do this. Maybe I want to approach this from a whole different angle. And your games are always like, okay, that's cool. We actually have thought of that. If you just want to, I think it's the last mission of Dishonored proper, if you are very careful and you stay stealth the whole time, you can skip the whole conceit of the boss, basically, which is like, oh, he gets scared, so he goes like to more and more secure locations. It becomes harder and harder to get to him. But if you're careful, you could just go around all that. And I think that kind of stuff it's just so fun. It's just so fun. And when you see it happen, you're like, oh wow, they really thought of this. It's such a neat visceral experience as a gamer.
And that is, I mean, there are many aspects that are hard to do in a game, but that is part of what's the hardest in our games. And fortunately, it's the hardest because it caters to that 1% of gamers. And but for that 1% of gamers, we still have to make it. And we still have to make it that you're never stuck somewhere, you're never locked in a conversation, not in a cinematic, or you never. Because otherwise, what we don't want are situations that feel unfair, like where you are with the villain and you're stuck in a cinematic, and then the villain leaves and close the door behind. That's to me is absolutely unacceptable. Never you will see a game of mine where that situation exists. Because I'll be like, dude, I'm there. Let me shoot the guy, right? So then it means that everything we do, there's always like, if there is a place where this bad guy is with you. Then there is a way to trap him, even if like it's a scripted scene or whatever, you can still, like, maybe if you thought before, maybe place an object to block him, whatever it is. Like as soon as it's real time, it's simulated, you can trust that the system is not going to betray you. And in order to make games like that, it's actually super hard. It's super hard, and it's also the trade-off is that therefore they're a little less guided, a little less clear in a way, right? And also potentially a little more buggy. There's some edge cases where the experience globally is going to be a little more rough on the edges than the thing that's very funnel, very controlled, very, but I hate those games though. It's not my thing. I don't like the games where I'm like, all right, man, like we are manipulating you into the experience. That's not my thing. So, but also we lose sales, by doing that. Let's be honest. The more we do games that are catered to people that are a little smarter and who like to do things a different way, means that the players that are very direct and need direction are gonna be a little lost in our games usually, right? So I think for the new game though, we're definitely trying to crack that nut, because I think that's the holy grail, is to have the accessibility and the clarity in the direction and the objectives of a simple game, yet having the depth of those more complex games. So that's our new challenge. We always have new challenges, and so that's one.
Yeah. No, and that's a very good. We'll get back to that, because the discussion of where the games industry is going, I think that point you made is very important. Okay, so that's Dishonored. And I mean, I could talk about any of these subjects with you for hours, but I need to keep this thing rolling. Let's go to Prey. Prey is just, it's a gem. It is a masterpiece. It is the fact that, for example, that the game takes away, for those who haven't played Prey 2017, go play it. It's great. It's probably pretty cheap on Steam right now. Go play it. Like, for example, you in this game, it's in a space station, but you can actually exit the space station and fly around in space. And the space station, from the model of the space station, is at scale. It is at scale. So basically anything that you're doing inside the space station is actually kind of reflected in the size and even in the locations of the model, which is just...
That was a nightmare. And I was fortunately not directly involved in that, because I'm not an artist, but I was trying to, I was in some of the meetings trying to maybe accommodate the story or whatever, so that with Ricardo Bear, he was my lead designer back then. We're just involved in trying to make that happen, like a one-to-one kind of thing, which again is one of the values that I've always liked to push, where nothing is fake. Everything is, if you can see something, if you can see a door, then you can there's something on the other side. And in Prey, we, even in Dishonored, when there was a door that you could not go on the other side, there would be a very clear it was because it was an abandoned, it was sealed because of the plague or whatever. So there was always like, we never really cheated the player in a way. That's kind of like this constant theme that is important to me, because otherwise I want to make sure that you feel like you're in a world, like in a real world. That's really that thing, that illusion of, the more you believe in the world that you're in, the more you believe everything. So in the case of Prey, yes, having it's interesting you're noting this, because I don't think I've heard that before, but it's true. It's one of those invisible value we're not going to put in on the box. The game is really not cheating you or whatever. But yeah, you were like, we had about 500 people on board of this space station, while all of them are listed. We with a name, etc., and they all have a bedroom. But again, at some point, you arrive to the quarters where they live, because it's all about being logical about where they eat, where they, etc., and where they live. One of the aisle has been destroyed, is in space floating, and that's the trick to get away with, like, well, there's only 20 rooms left, the rest have been destroyed by the apex, not by the apex, but the outbreak of aliens. And so, but anyway, we think of all of these things. Yes, we think of all, and we thought also of exactly what is the rotation of the moon and the sun in that around the space station. That was another thing that we were thinking. One of our lead programmer actually was super nerdy around space and how it exactly works, etc. So he produced to the best of his capacity the rotation in a logical way, at a speed that would be logical. And all of these things maybe are not things that people notice, but they probably feel it.
You're a systems guy, so this question. Let's talk a little bit about the mimics and the glue gun. The mimics are pretty incredible, because I think you said, talking about the game previously, that basically the idea with the enemy design was like, anything that we were going to give the enemies, the player gets to have a power thereof. And so even when you're doing the mimics, like, the mimics can become anything. So you're like, yes. So then the player too should become any object. You mean like a cup? You mean like some pencil? Yes, you can be a cup if you want.
And that's a good example of how having a consistent philosophy about game design brings you ideas that you don't have on your own. None of us were thinking, it would be cool to be able to turn into an object. But we were thinking about the monsters, and we knew also that we were going to learn the things from the monsters, but that came as a second thought. The first thought was like, yeah, it'd be cool if this character, it turned into anything, and it's cool. And then we were like, oh, hold on, shit, it means that we can do that too. And then fuck, okay, well, we have to try. And of course the programmers were not liking the idea, etc. But because of those, some items can be really small, which is cause problems with physics. But that's a good example of how this organic type of game design somehow works for us for free, right? But it's also hard to make, because then, yes, you have to commit to the consistency of your ideas.
It's fantastic. I think I already said, but the glue gun in that is a special. That's just a fun tool. That's just a fun tool to play around with, both as a weapon, as a way to travail across the space.
Yeah, and the glue gun was painful because we had a version at some point where you could. What was hard about it was not to prototype the first version, was to actually finish it, was to make something that worked in every kind of situation, on every type of entity, like monsters versus physics. What do they do to physics, etc. It's a lot of headache. And we the first version we had where you could actually build bridges. So you could, and they would stay in the air like that, which we could not do eventually because it was too heavy in memory. So then we had to do another rule, which is like you can only like glue a ball to a surface which is not already a ball itself, or if it is, then what it does is that it inflates the one behind. I mean, we had a chain reaction thing that eventually worked out, but the level, the amount of thinking and of iteration on this tool was insane. Because again, at the end, you have the reality of what it does to the game, how it can break the game if you give, or if you make it like as global as you wanted to make it at first, and also the reality of the engine. I guess the engine is going to break.
Were there any, if there had been like another Prey, and I'm assuming part of you was hoping if the game had done well, maybe there would be another entry in the series, because the ending people have long said certainly implies that you did want to do more, and it did get the excellent Moon Crash DLC, which is really cool, different but very cool. How would you have liked to have taken that formula? Like, where would you have liked to have gone further? Would you have taken the element like with the glue gun and maybe say, oh, let's see if we can blow up more of these ideas? Would you have tried to streamline some of it? What do you think you would have done?
I don't think I was leaving Arkane. I knew I was leaving Arkane maybe a year before the game shipped.
Well, really? I didn't realize that. Sorry.
Yeah. So maybe not a year, maybe 6 months before it shipped, and then I stayed another 6 months out of courtesy of, it was the deal basically that I had. Like, okay, I'll stay longer to make sure that the transition is gonna happen. So at that time, I didn't really know if the game was gonna perform or not, but I was not. That's a complex conversation. I was not in love with the IP itself of Prey. I never really wanted to make Prey because it's an IP that belonged to another developer, Human Head, and the full thing of how it ended up with us was not something that I personally supported. So, and also if you look at how this game is made, it's a little bit of it's a self-contained thing where we had told that story. There was not much more to be told. We did almost like jokingly say like, well, what could we do for a sequel, And we thought, maybe then this time we do it on Earth. Like you realize that actually the aliens. I mean, I don't know how much I'm spoiling here, but I'm probably totally spoiling. But the aliens have invaded Earth, and now you play as this kind of like hybrid agent, for humans, but like under the being able to navigate the aliens thing, because that's kind of like how you are at the end. And but we never really started to design anything, or I think at this point we were more interested in starting a new IP again, because again, I'm trying to think of another game that is like that. BioShock is like that. They tell a story of that underground complex, and personally, as a gamer, I don't feel it needed a sequel. It's just like, that was a beautiful story. It was incredible. I got it. And how do you expand on that? And here, the risk of doing a sequel for Prey, I think the fact that it's closed, you're in a dungeon in space. I think it's part of the formula of that game. And if you were to provide a sequel where now you're not trapped in the space station, then you're kind of breaking the game somehow. You're breaking the formula somehow. So you're taking a risk. Some people might say, oh, that's great, now I'm in an open world version of all of that. And some people may say, it lost something. It was better when it was smaller. And, I kind of like the idea of there was an elevator in the that process. It's part of the experience. The format is part of the experience. So, and then what do? Then you say, well, now you're trapped in another space station, which sounds weird. So I don't think it would have been a problem that I would want to have. I would have wanted to have. And some games, maybe it's cool. They don't have sequels. Maybe, I think, look at it like, your favorite movie director. I can tell you mine. I loved, of course, David Lynch. I like Tarantino a lot. There's not really sequels there. I mean, other than Kill Bill. But there's still a consistency and continuity in the new Tarantino movie. You know what you're going to get, more or less. It's going to surprise you somehow. The characters are going to be strong and interesting, and there's going to be wacky. There's going to be a moment of extreme violence. But anyway, I like to think of games a little like this. Like if you like the game of an auteur. I think we make games as auteurs, frankly. At least at Arkane, that's how I look at it, and now with WolfEye as well. If you like any of my games, there are chances you'll like the next one. Because even if it's not a sequel or something, there's gonna be something that is gonna be familiar to you in the same way that the next Tarantino is familiar.
You remind me a lot of ways with one of your other contemporaries, Ken Levin, because he has a similar feeling about game design where he respects people that want to do iterative, but that's not him. He would rather start again, try to create a whole new different kind of mousetrap, and instead of just making the previous mousetrap a little bit better. And that's kind of who you remind me of a little bit there.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised that it's common to a lot of creatives. It's just that the biggest paradox of the creative is that when you succeed, then the system wants you to do that thing again, that same thing again. They don't want you to make something else. I mean, think of a band like this fantastic band that everybody loves. They're stuck in either they do the same album and then everybody complains that it's the same as before, or they change and people complain that now it's not the same as before. It's very hard to so. I think when you succeed at one IP, you make this really great game now, people want a forever sequel of that, and then at the same time they will complain that it didn't evolve much. So there's a weird trap for creative, right? So I think the creative themselves, and again, it's not a general rule. I'm sure some people would love to work on the same IP for the rest of their lives. In fact, some authors have done that in the books or whatever, like Game of Thrones. But and it's probably also depend on the property. Frankly, if you are doing, I understand when you're doing something like Elder Scroll, which is it's a big world. It's its own world, right? It's not contained into one story. It's there's lore, there's another thing. There's much more to explore. Fallout has the ground for multiple games in there, because you could tell the story of there, you could tell the story there. It's so, I think it depends on the property, it depends on the people. The new game we're working on, I can imagine it having sequels because it's more of a bigger world to explore. But I don't know. Yeah. I like Ken a lot, by the way. We often we've talked a lot about these games.
No, it's cool. You guys have a very similar vibe, talking to both of you. Okay, so I guess I was wrong. I guess what the internet assumes for you is that, and I mean, you probably already have long realized this, but what people assume is that you left because Prey didn't perform as well as it might have or should have. I would have hoped it had. And then that's why you left, because it was a failure. Either that you left of your own accord or you were pushed out. Not that that's why I believe, this is just what the internet says. And so what you're telling me, there was something completely different. The internet is wrong, which often it is. And you were actually already planning to leave and go on. Can you what was going on with you? Because I think I heard another interview where you've talked about where you were uncomfortable, and you can tell me if it's wrong for some other reason, or you don't want to talk about it. That's okay too. That you were becoming uncomfortable with the way game development was going, because it was transitioning even farther from controllable teams where you know everyone you're working with, to we're doing the Ubisoft thing. It's a small city, and you don't hardly know anyone. And maybe that was something that you were uncomfortable with. You were uncomfortable that the games, especially in towards AAA development, were becoming so big, so out of control, so depersonalized, and that isn't you. That's not Raphaël.
Yeah, I mean, there was 46 reasons really. If you if you want to go by that. But some of it was just me being tired of the corporate life and some of the people above me that I had to deal with. And some of it was the direction in general the industry was going, because we were told back then immersive sims are not gonna cut it. You guys have to do open world multiplayer, ideally both. Which some of it is how Arkane ended up doing.
Redfall.
Yeah, Redfall is an open world multiplayer, and then also uh, Deathloop was multiplayer. So we had that mandate, which was I don't like mandates. There's it when we were acquired by Bethesda, we were very in line with what they wanted from us. It was the long honeymoon of several years where it was fantastic. It was like, look, we like to do these games. You guys like to publish them. Let's do it. And then we went Dishonored, Dishonored 2, Prey, and then the industry changes all the time, so I can't fault them. But the point is, the analysts had concluded that those games are not doing big numbers enough, and maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But the reason why those numbers are not big enough is because those groups are too big, and so in order to feed all the execs and all the people, all the layers of administrative people that are here, and investors, etc., you need to do colossal numbers, and that's why people gravitated towards things like game as a service and adding ways to microtransactions and ways how can we get as much money as we can from the players. It became really ugly, frankly. We were asked to think about DLC ads as we were pitching the game. So you're not even started on your game, and you're asked to think about what is your DLC plan. And that suddenly became very industrial to me, not very much as a boutique as I thought we were. Like bunch of passionate developers that like to make cool shit. So and I understand businesses, and they're not necessarily in that same mindset. So that was a big part of it. Another part of it was I was it had been 18 years with Arkane, and I thought, well, if I'm going to stay here forever. I started to be a little comfortable. I kind of like had done a little bit of everything I wanted to do in that context. So that combined with the corporate things above me that started to be really heavy, combined with the fact that we were not going to do any more immersive sims, at least back then. I don't know now. They might have changed their strategy, because now there's Microsoft and everything, so it's another world even. But yeah, it was time for me to just do my own thing, and at least to take a break, because back then, frankly, I don't even know if I wanted to do my own thing again. I was tired. I was a little burnt out, and yeah, I wanted to focus on music a little bit, on family time, and so that's what I did for some time. And then my executive producer on Dishonored, who had been with me since Arcs, actually, Julien Roby, he was like, man, don't you want to make like a small game with smaller teams, etc., where like more humane size? Because yeah, what you were saying was right too. Like there was a push for growing teams and like going for those next level games. Like people were looking at Destiny and telling us like this is more like what you need to do next. And it's like, it's not really me. It's not really what I'm feeling. So then then eventually we started this other thing, WolfEye.
Yeah, well, before what at the tail end of Prey, the big DLC is Moon Crash, which is different story. It's actually really interesting because it's immersive sim still, but it's also a roguelike.
Yeah.
It's really interesting how you tell all these different stories of all these different characters. It's pretty cool. There's a song in it,
right,
which you yourself performed, and you created a band, which that all just came out of this game, this DLC. which you now do. You can look up Raphael, look up weird wolves up there on Google or YouTube, and you got a bunch of music videos, and they're not bad. It reminds me of like some of the 80s rock. A little bit more synth. I think you call it electro rock. It's pretty good overall.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I'm a kid of the 80s. So, I started to do some of the very first music I did for our games was on ARX. It was the bard doing some guitar. But, and then I didn't do anything until Dishonored 2. In Dishonored 2, I did the credit song at the end. And then in Prey, there was semi-secret geometry and mind games, which is the opening. And the third song, I think. Well, and then there's realization in Mooncrash. I didn't do anything in Mooncrash other than the song, and all those songs were produced, by the way, by my audio director, so it's kind of like a collaboration.
Okay, yeah, my apologies for not realizing you've been doing some of the music stuff since almost the beginning then.
Yeah, but I mean, this was not as, it was more like a fun little thing in the case of ARX. It was just a little loop of guitar, whereas it really started on Dishonored 2, where I started to be interested in writing music again. And then I started to integrate the band's songs for Mooncrash. So you're right about that. The Weird Wolf, the first Weird Wolf song, called Realization, is on Mooncrash. And that was when I was leaving. So actually, after I left, I sent them that song, and that's probably the only participation I had to Mooncrash.
When you do your music, are you mostly a guitar player or a bass player? I know you and then your partner, you kind of differentiate between who is singing the songs, or sometimes you do it together. What's your main instrument?
It's either. Yeah, it's both. I think we both like the bass and guitar as well. It depends. So we usually rotate this depending on the song.
Okay. That's cool. I don't know about too many other game developers that have a band on the side. I mean, besides like a hobby band or something.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a few. Yeah, at some point we were, we've been touring in Europe. We had a label we toured in Germany and Holland. That was fun. A very, very different world. To me, it's like, it's a new character class. And I'm raising little by little, and it's interesting to start at the bottom.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I wish I had some of those talents. It's just one of those things
Hey, being a YouTuber is actually pretty hard. You have to make content all the time, right?
I should be making content all the time. That's that's the difference. No, I'm grateful for this show, and I think it's, you were talking about how cool it was in your career that you got to meet with all these people that you looked up to. And I've had some of that privilege, me talking to you now. That's pretty cool. I'm like, all right, this is good. I like this.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's it's interesting, right? The when you finally have a chance to interact with someone that you appreciate for the game or their product, and you have a chance to, it's a little surreal. You've had that many times, I assume. But I've never really been disappointed, frankly. I hear so many times people say, "Oh, you should never meet your heroes." I was like, I think I've met most of my heroes, even in music, in fact. And it's always been pretty cool. I've never been really disappointed. So I don't know why people say that.
Yeah. I guess a few more things if we could get into. Can you give us a sense maybe of the thinking? Because unfortunately, I think this is interesting. This did confuse me till I was getting ready for the interview, because I think I was like, I wasn't sure, because I thought maybe he was in Texas, but there's a chance because he's French, maybe he's in France again. So when we were scheduling, I'm like, what time zone should I be aiming for? But even when I think it's so interesting when you, after Dishonored, that you guys split the studio. So you had Arkane Lyon and you had Arkane Austin. The French guy stayed in Texas, and the Texan guy, he went to France.
Yes. Yes, I know. Everybody is extremely confused, and I sometimes take the time to go on Reddit and correct someone. But yes, Dishonored was started by Austin for maybe 6 months to a year, and then Leon, who was on other things, joined, and they have the huge team of huge the big team of artists and really really talented artists, but also level designers. So we finished the pre-production with a few of the French, and then the full production of Dishonored was made between the two, between Austin and Lyon, knowing that Lyon was a little bigger at that time because they had more programmers, they had more level designers, etc. And then at the end, Harvey and I still love each other, but we thought like, man, I need to breathe a little bit my own, and we both felt that, and so we said, how about, because I know he wanted to work on the sequel of Dishonored, how about you go to Lyon and I stay here in Austin? Because I was already in Austin as well for Dishonored 1. That's the other part that people sometimes get misunderstood. I'm in Austin since 2005. So then at that point in 2012 or 13 or whatever, Harvey went to Lyon, and the team in Austin stopped working on the next Dishonored entirely, and Lyon worked on Dishonored 2 on their own, and I was barely working myself on it. I was mostly focused on Prey, and sometimes I would give feedback on Dishonored because I was still the president of both groups. But it was more like testing, consulting occasionally, chatting with Harvey, moral support, texting each other. That was more my role on Dishonored 2.
Yeah, that's interesting. You guys did make the split studio thing work. I don't know if a lot of studios have in the same way. Like there are a lot of studios that like they have like a ton of support studios, but like the main branch is just like there. I don't know. I think it was an interesting setup you guys had.
I think what made it work is that I was in France initially until 2005. So from 99 to 2005, I was the founder of the company. So I was working very, very closely with these guys. And then when I moved to Austin, I was always going back and forth for a while, and that was kind of make it worth. And I think by the time we were done with Dishonored, it was already, the tensions were pretty high, and I don't think it would have worked for Dishonored 2 to work this way. It was difficult, but we did have some cross-pollination, because even for Prey, we had a few people from Dishonored that came, and then eventually really helped making Prey, and then we had a few people from Prey going to from Austin anyway, going to France as well, so there was definitely a blur, which is why it's so hard to talk about it, and this is why everybody's super confused, because if you don't know the details, then it's hard to make a general rule of what exactly happened.
Yeah, no, and a lot of it is reading tea leaves from the outside. It's like, well, we're just going to read the news stories or the headlines we know, then we're going to try to apply them like that's what's happened inside, when really we just don't have a lot of information.
Yeah.
Okay, so you left Arkane, and for some of the reasons you said, and it's a little bit prophetic, because Arkane Austin, unfortunately, did not come to a positive end, which is too bad, because I think an Arkane vampire game sounds like, oh yeah, that's pretty legit. Okay, I'm into this. But unfortunately, yeah, everything that went down with Arkane Austin, the Bethesda made them work on what became Redfall, and Microsoft bought them, and Microsoft says, oh, we're just going to cut some studios, and surprising everyone, Arkane Austin was cut, which is like, what? That's the studio everyone likes at Bethesda.
Yeah, that was really a weird move, and I recreating such a group is extremely hard. So I don't know why. I mean, I know why. I think frankly, someone. It was not Xbox. I think it's someone that looked at an Excel spreadsheet at another level. It came from Microsoft directly. they said, you gotta make some cuts, and then they had to choose or something. But I don't think it was it was a weird decision.
God, I hate this thing where there's been so much in this blow up of the industry and getting so big. There's just been so much purchasing of smaller studios, well-loved studios, bringing them in and then forcing them to make games they just have no experience making. That's just not their skill set. And making a multiplayer online service game is just so wildly different than from what you guys were doing with immersive sims. I mean, I know we still call it game development, but that's a very broad term.
Yeah, it's and again, I think back then when I was told, we don't really want you guys to make that kind of games anymore, which now might have changed again, but I'm talking about the management at the time that was on the team. That's when I realized that that's what we know how to do. That's the people that I recruited, the people that came to us like we were a church. It's because we know how to do these things, and how I don't think it's very smart to put us on something else.
That is terrible. I guess the positive is that I was going to say your band is weird wolves, but your new studio is wolf. Had a lot of wolf motifs.
That's true. Yeah, it's weird. Yeah.
You I guess have a ton of former Arkane staff that are with you at your current studio, from what I've heard.
Yeah, I would say 80% of the people are ex Arkane. Yeah, probably. Some of them in Lyon, some of them in Austin. So yeah, it feels very familiar. It's nice actually. It's very cool.
Are you willing to give any hints for your next the current project that you're working on at all, or is that you're keeping it?
I can basically say what's already public, maybe in different PCs, but I can try to summarize. We are so. When we started, we wanted to do smaller games where, at least you got to start somewhere, and we're a little tired and of the big teams, etc. So we did Weird West, which has a lot of the similar values that what I usually like to do, but with tiny budget, smaller team, etc. Tiny, not that tiny, but compared to what we used to do. And after that, we got the itch again. I said, like, man, I think gamers really want us to do the thing that we usually do, and we kind of want to do the thing that we usually do. And even though we were in denial for a while, we was like, man, we got to go back there. So that's pretty much what happened. We went, okay, how do we go back there? Like, what's the game we want to make? Because for me, it's all about wanting to make a special game. So it has to gestate. It has to, you can't just like force it. So it took a while, but anyway, eventually we had it. We thought, like, what would be really cool is this very, let's say, arcane type of game, like in the mechanics, in the mobility, the type of powers you have, all the and even the world design, frankly, because we have a lot of the same people. And but this time, so imagine if it's like a little bit of, so it's got the structure of Prey, that thing where you can move everywhere. So it's contiguous, unlike Dishonored, which was mission based. But a lot of the systems that maybe are a little more like Dishonored, and served, instead of being like contained on a space station, this time it's still small. It's a small open world. But it's really crafted everywhere. There's no random. It's all like, we really make the thing we know how to do, but we make it in the open. So that's why we have a world that is retro sci-fi 1900s in America, and it's retro sci-fi. So you will, at some point, it's gonna go really weird. There's a lot of plot twists and surprises. And yeah, we're so super excited about it. We're very, very excited about it.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm looking forward to that. I hope the development goes well and we'll be able to play, because that sounds cool. I'd be into that.
Yeah, and it's been very, today, I mean, I've been in the industry for about 30 years. And it's always been hard. It's always been hard if you want to do the thing you want to do, and it's always been hard because you go at odds against the grain with everything else, with the industry, unless you're like incredibly aligned with the with what people want and what the market wants, and and what the investors want. But it's not really the case. When you're an author, you kind of like, you want that thing, And so for me, signing games has always been hard, from Arx Fatalis to now this latest game, and so right now the context is so hard. People see that things are crazy in the industry, but they don't fully realize to what extent. And money has gone. People have changed. It's really not great right now, and in some ways it's deserved. But nevertheless, it makes it even harder for people like me who like to do that kind of game to find the money for it. So, and we did. I think because we're consistent. We know what we're doing. We had a nice, very, very cool demo, and we had investment for a while that then changed to another investor, and it's been kind of crazy. And then we found the publisher, NeoWiz, that we really like. We feel like they totally see in us and the game what we want to do and what we want them to see. So there's like we're very aligned. It feels very right. But yeah, so I'm really grateful for that, because it's one of those rare games that is being made with from the right place. It comes from a bunch of people that truly want to make this game. It's not a corporate mandate. Sorry, it's not a let's make a buck kind of game. It's like, let's make art. Let's make a really cool game for our fans and for people who like the same things that we do.
Awesome. I mean, I'm tempted to ask you to elaborate on a lot of that, but it's okay. Yeah, I don't want you to be spilling details again and getting you in trouble. As much as my curiosity would love to be sated. So.
Yeah, we will. It's there's a protocol. People like to be secretive about things, but sometimes we release little infos. We throw a screenshot or something of a conference we are at or whatever. But we will. And I think sometime this year there will be a private alpha. People can subscribe to the list. I can't remember They will find it if they look at our website, WolfEyestudios.com. I'm sure there is a link somewhere there. They can subscribe to our private alpha, which will be available sometime this year. So,
okay, so we're wrapping up here. One thought that's come to mind, just thinking about all the research and stuff I've put into figuring your history out and listening to you talk. You said, I love this quote you gave in the No Clip documentary about making Prey, and you said that making a game, it takes a lot of miracles back to back to make a game. And I think of Raphaël Colantonio, I think of your own life, and I think it takes a lot of miracles back and back to make a Raphaël Colantonio, because I think of your humble beginnings and the difficulties you had. I mean, think of just the miracles in life. You had that friend that exposed you to Ultima. I know you had a friend that gave you the magazine, which you then put into, and somehow that actually turned to reach out to EA. And you've had all these steps throughout your career. I would say those were miracles. I said they're small miracles. Yes, work required. You definitely have earned what you've achieved, but also miracles. And that gives me a little bit of hope, Raphaël. A little bit of hope, because I'm like, if you just think about where you started, that's like, even if some of us, some of my viewers, even myself, I feel like, well, didn't always get the best start in life. Look at Raphaël. Maybe we too can go far.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty common story, in fact, in the sense that if you really put your attention on what the goal is, and you filter everything that you do towards that goal, which I used to think everybody was like that. But it's not necessarily the case. There's a lot of people who are not sure about what they want to do in their life, or they don't necessarily have a passion that is more important than another. In my case, I had this crazy drive. There was no other way. That's what I wanted, right? So it gave me that kind of clarity in my direction. And I think when you have that, which might be the hardest of all the rest, when you have that clarity, then things come to you naturally because you're so obsessed with it. You talk only about this, so you meet other people who talk about that, and then it becomes that thing. It becomes that ground that you create for yourself, where now you're not wasting time going to the pub. Instead you're doing this thing, and it's not sacrifice because you love doing this. So I think it's all down to what is really, really important to you. And yeah, and in some ways, some of those things were maybe too important for me because I missed out on some other things, So, but I think it's really where you put your attention.
All right, that's excellent. Where can people, if they're just share with us some of the social media links. Where can people find your stuff? Maybe your band. What should they check out? What do you think my viewers should go to if they want to get more Raphaël?
So if they want to get more Raphaël, well, we have a Twitter account, X account, I guess now. WolfEye Studios, right? So that's the game company. We're also on Instagram and WolfEye as well. I mean, you'll find us for sure. And then if you're interested in the band, I have Spotify. That would be so nice to follow us on IG. There's Weird Wolves Music, or to add us as well on Spotify. And that would be that'd be nice. And it always helps.
Awesome. Yeah, check out his music. It's fun. I enjoy listening to it, trying to put everything together. Thank you so much, Raphaël. I really appreciate it. You are just awesome being willing to talk with me and share your experiences here. I have major respect for your work. I hope your future projects are awesome and just life treats you well, because I think you definitely deserve it.
Thank you so much. I always like to connect with gamers and people who like the same kind of games that I like, just because it's a shared passion, and it's all, that only the ones who know kind of thing. There's this implicit shared appreciation for an experience, for something, so it always feels good. It feels there is something relatable that always humanly feels good. So that's cool.
Awesome. Well, on that note, dear viewers, we're going to wrap this things up. Thank you for taking the time to watch Culturescape today. Again, if you like the show, be sure to check out some of our wonderful interviews, like our recent one with the Mr. Ken Levin, and be sure to subscribe to the channel. We couldn't do this show without your help, especially from my editor, Chris Hollywicky, who makes me look way more competent than I actually am. And of course, all of you viewers. You guys are awesome. I love getting your comments, your thoughts. Please tell me what you think of this video, what you think of Raphaël. Maybe you could talk about what would have been the alternative universe if Prey was a big hit, the better one, the better timeline. What would that have been like? Share your comment below, and I guess we'll just end it here. Thank you so much, guys. Until next time, keep geeking out. Hey there, gang. If you are a fan of Culturescape, and I know you are, and want to get involved in supporting the show, well, now you can. By joining the Culturescape Patreon, you'll help support me and my editor, Chris, as we create the show and produce more quality journalism. For just $5 or $10 a month, you not only help us, but get access to our exclusive members-only Discord. You'll also get to vote on and suggest new guests for the interview. So if you are a fellow weeb and love Culturescape, then come join us today on Patreon.